This is not the first time this has happened. In fact, it happens basically every time. And let me just give you one example. Around the later part of the 1800s, there was people showing up with a new set of symptoms of acute paralysis. And eventually that was called polio. And because this was the time of Pasteur and the whole inauguration of the germ theory, by the way, as many of you probably know, apparently Pasteur recanted the germ theory and eventually said the germ is nothing, it's all the terrain or the experience of the person. But let's skip that for a minute. So they had these bunch of people with the symptoms of acute paralysis. That's what we call polio. It also was the time when they were first spraying the orchards and the apple trees with something called lead arsenic. Now, the part of your body that has the pathology, the part that's sick, is called the anterior horn cells of the nervous system. That's why you get paralysis. It turns out that lead arsenic and then later DDT are very specific poisons for exactly that part of the nervous system. So anyways, they said, well, this must be an infection. So what they did, and I would say what they did, believe it or not, but again, if you go to the Virus Mania book, you will see the entire documentation of this, is they took children who were paralyzed and some who had died, and they extracted some of their spinal cord that was diseased or their brain tissue after they died. They basically chopped it up like in a blender. They didn't purify it. They didn't see a virus. They didn't have electron microscopes then, so they couldn't see a virus. They didn't see a bacteria. They didn't even filter it. They just took this chopped up, essentially spinal cord tissue and gave it to monkeys to drink. But interestingly, nothing happened. And that was one of the big conundrums of this polio virus situation, is they couldn't find an animal that they could make sick. So then they injected it subcutaneously, like we could give a vaccine. And they injected it subcutaneously into the arms of monkeys, and none of them got sick. So then they decided, we have to prove that this is an infectious disease. So they took a child who was paralyzed. They took some of the diseased anterior horn cells from the nervous system. They chopped it up, took two monkeys, drilled holes in their skulls, and injected about 1/4 cup of unpurified spinal fluid goop into their brains. One of the monkeys died. The other one became paralyzed. You can see a picture of the researcher who was crowned as one of the shining lights of infectious disease, holding up the monkey, saying, this paralyzed monkey proves that it's an infectious disease. Now, I would say, if you ask me what to make of that study, I would say that if I was a monkey and somebody came at me with a bunch of goop from somebody who just died or had a disease in their spinal cord and said, I want to drill a hole in your brain and inject it in, if I was the monkey, I would run away as fast as I could, because clearly that proves nothing. Now, this same thing was, the same failure of evidence was done with the H1N1 situation. It was done with the H5N1 situation. It was done with SARS. It was done with Hep C. It was done with Ebola virus. It was done with Zika virus. This is not the first rodeo for the failure of the infectious disease community to follow the actual laws and rules that they set up to prove infectious etiology.